the different type of chemical species which are present in the system. And what is P stands for? P stands for the number of phases. So how many different phases a system can exist? So far we have studied that it may exist in liquid phase, it may exist in vapor phase, it may exist in solid phase. In fact, many different material, depending upon the temperature and pressure, they may have different solid phases. Like let us say carbon may have different kind of solid phases. Okay, that we have already discussed in the earlier lecture during describing PT diagrams. So what are the different things in these particular expressions in the Gibbs phase rule? F stands for the number of degree of freedom, C is for the number of components, and P is the number of phases. So let us think of a system. Water. Let us we have pure vapor in the superheated region, or we have pure liquid in the subcooled region. So what is the number of components? C is equal to 1 because the chemical species is only 1. If we consider either vapor phase or liquid or solid, number of phases will be 1. So if C is equal to 1 and P is equal to 1, what will be F? F will be equal to C minus P plus 2. Here C is equal to 1, P is equal to 1. So we need two independent properties to specify the state that we already know. We have so far discussed it. Similarly, let us consider another situation. The two-phase mixture, vaporization process. Okay, within the vapor dome, components are 1, phases are 2, liquid phase and vapor phase. Okay, so how many independent properties are required? F is equal to 1. So you can see we need to specify at least one independent property to specify its thermodynamic state. To specify the mixture state, what we know, we basically need to specify its dryness fraction or specific volume or something. Okay. Then let us consider P is equal to 3. It is the triple point where temperature, pressure and volume both are automatically fixed, because P is equal to 3 means it is a point where the liquid, vapor and solid, they appear in equilibrium. Okay, so this equation is obviously valid for the system is in thermodynamic equilibrium. So in that case, you will see F is equal to 0, because so in that case you do not have any flexibility to change the system by varying any one of the parameters or any one of the thermodynamic properties. So triple point is fixed for every material. Every pure substance, there is a fixed triple point. You cannot change its state. Understood this point? This phase rule, application of the phase rule? Everybody?
Yes, sir.
I hope so.
Yes, sir.
Now, where from this concept comes? Let us look into the derivation of the phase rule for a non-reactive systems. Okay. Let us consider a system, heterogeneous system where there are C number of components, capital C number of components. Capital C number of components may be C1, C2, C3 and C suffix C. Here the subscript denotes the name of the components. So C1 is a component, maybe one species, C2 is another species, C3 is another species, and CC is another species. So there are C number of system components. And each components are present in P number of phases. Okay, so it may appear why we should go for so many generalized situations. If you go for the metallurgy and study of the phase change processes, this kind of relationship or generalization is very much important. Okay, so for each component, let us say there are P number of phases. Okay, that means it may be in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase alpha, phase beta, like that. So a general nomenclature for designating any component at a particular phase is denoted by this. C suffix I with a superscript of alpha denotes that the component I in alpha phase. So each phase has how many phases? P phases. So if you look into the C1 component will have a phase 1, 2, 3, 4 and Pth phase. Similarly, C2 component will have the phases 1, 2, 3 and so P phases. So how many number of phase into components are there? C into P number of phase and components are there. Now, if we want to specify the state of such system, For a pure substance, we know we require a temperature and pressure. That comes from our basic considerations of the simple compressible substance we have studied. We need at least temperature and pressure to be specified. And for each species, or each component and their corresponding phases, we need to specify their compositions. Okay, so if we want to write the Gibbs function of this particular component, how we can write this? You have come across the chemical potential? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Tell me, yes or no? Chemical potential?
Yes, sir.
So by this time, that means you know. So Gibbs function of this particular heterogeneous system may be written as, for, let us say we are talking about the component 1 to C. For each phases, we can write this is the chemical potential, this is the Gibbs function for the phase 1. So this is the Gibbs function for phase 2, and this is the Gibbs function for the phase B. So we need to specify this many number of compositions for each component and each phases. So how many number of quantities required to be specified to fix the state of this heterogeneous system? First of all, we need temperature and pressure. At equilibrium, at thermodynamics, we need to specify temperature and pressure. And apart from that, for each phases and each components, we need to specify their compositions. This composition in the present case is number of mole. Okay, so we need actually C into P plus 2 number of quantities to be specified. Okay, where this 2 comes from temperature and pressure. Now, let us consider the situation where the phases do not, or components which are present in different phases, they do not undergo any kind of chemical reactions. So there is no chemical reaction. If there is no chemical reactions, then a system, how the number of moles of a system may change. Just think of a vaporization process. So at any instant of time, the number of moles of the vapor present in a mixture may change because of the transport of the liquid from liquid state to the vapor state. So if there is no chemical reactions, only transport of one phase to another phase may change the composition of the phases. So we can have only transport of the phases. But if the system is in equilibrium, that is a very important point. So in that cases, there will be no transport of any component from one phase to another phase. So in that case, N is also fixed. So, but it has to be remembered that at equilibrium, the mass fraction, sum of the mass fractions of the different components in a particular phase has to be 1. So that is one of the constant that we come from. So what it means that the sum of the mole fractions must equal to unity for each of the phases. So if we consider the phase 1, so each of the component, their total mass fractions has to be 1. Similarly, in phase 2, their total mass fractions has to be 1. And phase P, their total mass fractions are to be 1. So how many equations we are having from these particular constants? This is a constant, equation of constants. So we have number of equations which are available P. Okay, because there are P number of phases, so for each phases there is a one equation. Now, apart from that, since there is no chemical reactions, so in that case, what would happen to the chemical potentials? When does chemical reactions takes place? Chemical reaction takes place whenever there is a gradient in chemical potential. It is just like, it is also, you can say, gradient driven phenomenon. Heat transfer takes place because of the gradient in temperature, where temperature is the potential. Mass transfer takes place because of the mass concentration gradient. Fluid flow takes place because of the pressure gradient. So chemical reaction takes place because of the potential gradient. Now, if a system is in equilibrium, that means it is not reacting. So in that case, chemical potential of a particular component in different phases are to be same. Okay. So if they are not reacting, so in that case, if we consider the component 1, you can say their chemical potentials will be also same. So in the different phases, the component 1, their chemical potentials of are same. So how many equations are there in these equations? How many equations may be constructed? If A is equal to B, one equation. If A is equal to B is equal to C, there are two equations. So if A is equal to B is equal to C is equal to D, there are three equations. So if similarly, if 1 is equal to 2, mu1 is equal to mu1 2 is equal to mu1 3, that equal to mu1 b, it corresponds to p minus 1 number of equations. So how many equations may be constructed like that way? If there are C components, so there may be C into p minus 1 number of equations. So how many equations altogether we have? We have number of unknowns to be specified. What the system is C into p plus 2, where 2 stands for TNP and CNP stands for the compositions. Okay. Then we will see from the equation of constants, which says that the mole fractions of the different species present in the different phases, their sum has to be 1 for each of the phases. Okay. So that gives us p number of equations for p phases. And equality of the chemical potentials of different component in their respective phases give us p minus 1 number of equations for each component. So if there are C component, we have C into p minus 1 number of equations. So how many excess variables are there in the equations? These are the total number of variables. We have this much number of equations and this. So this comes from your chemical potential equality. This comes from the mass fraction constants. So what is remaining here is equal to F is equal to C minus P plus 2. So if F is equal to C minus P plus 2, this F basically gives the excess variables that need to be specified to fix the state. Have you got this point? So that's why it is called degree of freedom of the systems. Okay. So what could be in the F? It may be temperature, pressure, and the composition of the different species. Okay. Now just go back to your earlier case. So this is the Gibbs phase rule for non-reactive systems. That is what we have derived. Have you understood this? Yes or no? If you have understood this, then tell me, in a mixture of vapor, water vapor and air, how many components are there?
Sir, 2.
Tell me, 2 components. How many phases are there? Tell me, how many phases are there? Both are in the vapor phases, gaseous phases, right? It is not liquid or it is not solid. It's a mixture of water, vapor and air. So there is a single phase. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what will be the degree of freedom, or how many number of variables to be specified? C is equal to 2, P is equal to 1. So C minus P is equal to 1 plus 2, so 3. So you will see when you study psychometry, you need to specify temperature, pressure, and any one of the properties, maybe compositions, maybe mole fraction or mass fraction or any other quantities, which is a function of any one of these quantities. That has to be specified in order to specify the state. Understood this? So for pure substance,
Yes,
it is, yeah, tell me. Tell me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, any question? No question. Okay. So this is the point up to which will be covered in your mid-sem questions. Okay. So in your mid-sem, the portion will be stoichiometric analysis and properties of the pure substance. For properties of the pure substance problems, you need to carry thermodynamic property tables. Mollius diagram, I have already discussed, right? Yes or no? Mollius chart, of course I have discussed, I have shown.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you should
Yes, sir.
you should carry one model diagram with you during the examinations. Maybe I can give you some of the problems to identify the changes that you have to take using your Mollius diagram and take a scan of that. It may so happen. Okay, so keep it with you, one copy. And apart from that, you have to keep your thermodynamic property tables for the mid-sem exam. So that is your syllabus. I may also declare it in the classroom, but since I am telling here, you should take it granted that this is the syllabus in my part. Okay. So,
Sir, can you please repeat the syllabus for the main?
Syllabus, what we have covered so
Chapter.
far, the first part, what we covered, psychometric
Stoichiometry.
analysis, right?
Yes.
And the second part is the properties of the pure substance. Up to the Gibbs phase rule, this is also in the properties of pure substance. So these are the two topics I have covered. So that will be the syllabus for the next. Whatever I have covered, everything. Okay. Now, let us go to the another topic, that is the psychometric analysis. Okay. What is psychometric analysis? Psychometric analysis basically involves the thermodynamic studies of the systems involving mixtures of dry air and water vapor. It may be a condensed water phase also that may be present. So primarily when we talk about psychometric principles or psychometric analysis, we talk about the analysis of the system which involves dry air and water vapor in a mixture. Okay. Why this kind of analysis are very important? Can you tell me two important factors which governs human comfort? Environmental factor. One is temperature, right? What is the other one?
Pressure.
No, pressure, atmospheric pressure is constant. What is the basic difference between New Delhi and this eastern zone of India, Kolkata, during the summer?
Humidity.
It is not humidity. It is the relative humidity. Okay. So if you go in Delhi, it is very dry weather, right? In summer. Whereas in Kolkata or in this region, it is very humid weather. So two of the very important parameters, temperature and relative humidity, is very important. And depending upon that, if we want to set air conditioner in your room, your relative humidity has to be set based on your comfort level. Okay, so for that, you need a knowledge of the properties of the water vapor present in the air. So this chapter basically, a major part of this deals with the psychometric principles. That is one of the applications. Now, if you look into the electronic industries or many other process industries where a controlled temperature and relative humidity is a very important factor for production, maintenance. If you look into the preservations of the foods, cold storages, there also you will see two important parameters which are very important to be controlled for long-term preservations or effective preservations of those food materials or other commodities. They are also temperature and relative humidity. So we need to control temperature and relative humidity because external conditions may not be conducive or favorable for what we want. So we have to condition them. So what is the physics behind this processing of this vapor and the air mixture? That is basically discussed in the psychometric principle course. Okay. So what we can say in nutshell is that the knowledge of the behavior of such system, that means air conditioning systems, devices, cooling towers. What is the application of the cooling tower? You know what is a cooling tower?
Yes, sir.
Where it is seen, cooling towers? Mostly in thermal power plant. Okay. So for cooling water, it is required. So their basic principle is that the water droplets basically evaporate, and that latent heat is basically utilized, or vaporization is basically utilized for cooling the water. Okay. So latent heat it releases because of the vaporization. As a result, water temperature drops. So there also, if you supply very moist air for cooling, so in that case, the scope of vaporization will be less. Okay. So if the air just enough amount of water which it can store, within a given temperature and pressure. So it will not evaporate. So cooling tower will not work. Okay. So that's why you will see one of the typical applications in northern India. You will find what it is called during the summer they run cooler, right? What is the basic principle of the cooler? There is a water basically comes from a water body and there is a fan, right? So continuously water is evaporated because of that cooling action is created. At the same time, what happens? Relative humidity of that compartment or room that increases. But if you can you use a cooler in Kolkata or in this region? Is it possible? Does it bring comfort to us?
No,
Have
sir.
you seen in Kolkata anybody uses cooler during summer?
No, sir.
Because here humidity itself is so high, this technique of cooling will not work. It will create extra difficulties. Okay. So design of the cooling tower, coolers, this basically basic concepts.
But
Yeah.
I have seen lots of people using coolers around Chittaranjan.
Yeah, if the weather is dry, remember, if the weather is dry, in this region, in some part away from Kolkata, if you go away from Ganga, okay, so if the weather is dry, that may be used. But technically, you try to understand what is the basic principle. It has to be evaporated, right?
Sir, are
If
you
the weather itself,
presenting the screen now?
yeah,
Sir, are you presenting the screen now? It's not visible.
okay. Okay, still now not so important thing I am covering. Okay, I should.
Okay.
Okay, so the basic idea is that the way it is being cooled. Now we'll start our discussions about that. So some of the major applications is air conditioning devices, cooling towers, industrial applications requiring close control of vapor content in the air. So to address those kind of problems, we need to study stoichiometric analysis. Now, before studying, we need to define what is called a moist air. What is a moist air? Moist air, the term moist air refers to a mixture of dry air. Dry air means it doesn't contain any vapor. Okay, water vapor. So it is called dry air and water vapor. The mixture of these two things is called the moist air. Okay. Remember, the dry air in this analysis is treated as a pure component. And the overall mixture and the mixture component behave as an ideal gas. So the overall mixture and the mixture component behave as an ideal gas. Fine. So when does a gas or mixture of gases behave as an ideal gas? Under what conditions? Can you tell me? Anybody? Under what conditions?
Yes, sir.
So can you repeat one?
Under what conditions a gas may be considered as an ideal gas, or when a gas behaves as an ideal gas?
High pressure, low temperature.
Sir, when it's follow
When high pressure, low temperature.
So low pressure, high temperature.
Low pressure, high temperature. Oh, then let me state that because it's a very fundamental concept. Let me see. Now, what is the equation of state of a gas? Ideal gas. You have studied in your high secondary, like PV is equal to RT, where R is the universal gas constant. Yes or no? So every time PV has to be RT, if the gas has to be ideal gas. So in that case, what will be the ratio? PV divided by RT has to be 1. Right? Now, if this PV divided by RT is not 1, that means the gas is deviating from its ideal behavior. That factor Z is called the compressibility factor. Right? Now, here is the value of compressibility factor from 1. The gas will deviate from its ideality. Now, if you plot the pressure and temperature and Z values for the different gases, under different pressure and temperatures, you will see that at low pressures and high temperatures, the value of Z is basically very close to 1. And one of the very important observation is that it will be more rational if you go for plotting the pressure and the temperature with a reduced scale, where let us say we define a reduced pressure. Reduced pressure means the pressure of the gas divided by the critical pressure. Similarly, we can define reduced temperature. Reduced temperature means temperature divided by the critical temperature. So it is basically scaling kind of thing. Okay. So if we plot reduced pressure and the reduced temperature as the variables, let us say in a plot we are varying the value of Z with respect to the reduced pressures. Okay. So if for a particular pure component PC is constant, so if you increase the pressure P, so in that case what would happen? PR will keep on increasing. Similarly, PC is constant for a particular component of gases, and if you value the T, PR will increase. So this is a reduced pressure and reduced temperature. So if you plot Z along the y-axis, that is the compressibility factor along the z-axis, and if you take reduced pressure along the x-axis, and if you plot the value of Z for different values of the reduced temperature, we'll get a set of curve like this. This kind of curve. Now, it is observed that almost all the gases, for many of the gases, they basically follow similar kind of patterns. So here in this figure, you can see for almost gases, for all the gases, why this reduction is done? This reduction is done to represent various kind of gases. So if you plot for a single component gas, Z as a function of pressure for different kind of temperature, it will give a curve like this one. But when you scale it in terms of the reduced pressure and reduced temperature, there are many gases like methane, ethylene, ethane, propane, butane, water vapor, isooctane, N-heptane. They will have the same kind of patterns of their variations with the compressibility factor defined as PV divided by RT and the reduced pressure PR for the different values of TR. This particular kind of graph is called the compressibility chart, and this particular phenomenon that for almost all the gases, if you plot the Z as a function of pressure for different values of temperature, they have the same trend and they basically collapse on the same curve. You can see if you consider TR is equal to 2 for the different kind of gases, it is the same curve. This particular phenomenon is called the principle of the corresponding states. Okay, so this is called the principle of the corresponding states. Now the important thing is when we may consider a gas to behave like an ideal gas. First of all, these are the values. Basically, let us consider pressure PR is equal to 1 and temperature is equal to 1. Reduced temperature is equal to 1. What is reduced temperature? Temperature T divided by the critical temperature. What is reduced pressure? Pressure P divided by the critical pressure. So in this particular graph, you can see when the reduced temperature is TR is equal to 1, so this corresponds to this particular curve. Okay. And when the reduced pressure is PR, you can see this one. So what is the value of Z? It is 0.2, it is far away from 1. So in this particular case, can we consider a gas to behave like an ideal gas? This is a question, yes or no? Can you do that? Please tell me, yes or no, anybody?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We can consider as an ideal gas. What is mean ideality? Z has to be 1, but here Z is equal to 0.2. It is far away from 1.
No, sir. No, sir.
Understood this? That is one situation. Now consider your TR is equal to 2. Okay, that is reduced temperature is equal to 2. So here you can see for any pressure, for any values of reduced pressure, it is very close to 1. Isn't it? From this graph, can you see this graph? Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
So here you can see when the reduced pressure is 2, it is the reduced temperature is close to 2. For any pressure, you can say the gas may behave as an ideal gas with very small error, because the Z value is not much deviating from 1. Compressibility factor is not much deviating from 1. Okay, so that's why you people say that at high temperature. So it is a better statement is that it is not high temperature, because what is meant by high? What temperature? It should be better statement should be at higher reduced temperature. For different gases, when you make a general statement for different gases, so you have to use the term reduced temperature. So at higher reduced temperature, reduced temperature Tr is equal to 2, you may say for any pressure, a gas may be considered as an ideal gas with very small error. But if reduced temperature is low, when we may consider a gas to behave as an ideal gas, okay, you can see very close to very low values of the reduced pressure. Pr is very, very less than 1. So in this region, compressibility factor is 1. So as a general statement, we can say when the reduced pressure of a gas is very, very less than 1, that means at a very low pressure or at a very high reduced temperature, a gas behaves as an ideal gas. Understood this point? So now onwards, do not say at low temperature or low pressure. Yeah, tell me.
Yes, I understand.
Come. So here in this particular case, you will find that Pr and Tr in such a value that they will behave as an ideal gas. Now, let us consider a system. The system basically has a temperature of T and pressure P. It's a closed system. It has got a fixed volume of V, temperature T and pressure P, which contains a mixture, which contains a moisture. That means a mixture of dry air and water. Fine. So let us say Na is the number of moles of the ith species. That means that is air. Okay. So Ni stands for number of moles of the ith species and Mi stands for the mass of the ith species in the mixture. And M is the total mass. So what are the species which are present here? We are considering dry air to be a pure substance here. Okay. So we can say that the total mass of the system is mass of the air plus mass of the water vapor which is spread. So the total number of moles of the mixture will be equal to total mass M divided by molecular weight of the mixture. So this is the total mass of the mixture that we can define in this way. Each mixture component is considered to act as if it existed alone in the volume V. So at the temperature of the mixture, we can write pressure P is basically the partial pressure of the air plus partial pressure of the vapor. Okay. So we can write P is equal to Pv is equal to nRT, that is the N is the number of moles, and R bar is the universal gas constant. It is represented. In some books it is written R suffix U. Here I am using R bar as the universal gas constant. So we can write N is equal to total mass divided by molecular weight of the air and vapor mixture. So we can write P is equal to M into R divided by M into T divided by V. This is equation 3a we are representing, and so PV may be written as M into R into T, where R is the gas constant. Now ideal gas equations of the state for the different species like dry air and the vapor may be written as PV is equal to NA RT divided by V. This is for air. Similarly for the vapor we may write NV into R bar into T divided by V. So this is equation 4 and 4b. So finally we can write pressure Pa is equal to Ma into R bar divided by Ma, which is the molecular weight of air, and T divided by V. Similarly for the vapor we can write Mv, that is the mass of the vapor present in the mixture, into the gas constant, which is universal gas constant divided by the molecular weight of the vapor into T divided by V. So these are the equations 5a and 5b. So what is Pa by P? So if we just write Pa divided by P, Pa is basically Na into R bar into T by V, and P is basically V divided by nRT. So it basically Pa divided by P basically gives the mole fraction of the component here. Similarly, we can write the mole fractions of the vapor as the partial pressure into the total pressure. So this is the general statement. in a gas mixture, the partial pressure of each component is basically product of the mole fraction of that component into the total pressure. So that is what has been just logically established in this particular directions. So partial pressure of the air present in the mixture is total pressure into mole fraction of the air. Similarly, partial pressure of the water vapor present in the mixture is the total pressure into the mole fraction of the water vapor. Okay. So that is how we can specify the state. Now, let us consider water vapor which is present in the air. Sorry. So we have seen the TV diagram earlier for water, right? These are the constant pressure lines. So constant pressure lines will basically move like this. Now let us consider in air, the temperature of air is 21 degrees centigrade. Okay. And it has got, let us say, a vapor pressure of 0.01741 bar. Okay. We'll show one examples later on. So let us say its vapor pressure is something like that. And now, what is the vapor pressure? Saturation vapor pressure corresponding to that temperature. It is PG, right? And that PG is definitely higher than the vapor pressure which is present. So what is the probability that? So if you consider water bodies, and over the water bodies, what happens continuously? Evaporation takes place. Okay. And because of the evaporation, what would happen? Some water molecules which are present in the water body, they will evaporate and they will mix up with the air which is present of the water bodies. So what would happen? Higher is the water vapor present in the air, higher will be the vapor pressure. So how long this process will take place? Until and unless this process comes to an equilibrium. And it will come to an equilibrium, we will see that the water vapor which is present in that particular water body, if it is very close to the water body, they will be saturated. So until and unless the vapor pressure present in the air is equal to its corresponding saturation pressure, this process of migration will keep on changing, evaporation will take place. So when the partial pressure of the water vapor present in the moist air is equal to the saturation pressure of water at a mixture temperature, the mixture is said to be saturated. Okay, so when I talk about a saturated mixture of air, water vapor, okay, so it means that the partial pressure of the vapor present in the air is corresponding to the saturation pressure at that particular temperature. Now, the amount of the moisture present in moist air may varies from 0 in case of the dry air. In case of dry air, it is 0, and to its maximum value at the saturation state. Okay, so if we fix up a temperature and pressure, what is the minimum value a mixture may contain? It is 0. There is no water vapor. That is a pure dry air. Then if you allow water vapor to mix up with the air, what is the maximum amount it can absorb? It can absorb up to the saturation point. Okay, so beyond that, even if there is a water vapor, if you add, that will be precipitated. That will not be absorbed. Okay, so its maximum moisture carrying capacity corresponding to that its pressure will be equal to the saturation pressure corresponding to that pressure. Now, as we said, for a mixture of water vapor and air, it's a two-component system, single phase. So, how many components are to be specified? First of all, temperature and pressure has to be specified. Apart from that, a sample of moist air can be described by specifying either number of moles of the dry air and water vapor. If you fix any one of them, another one is fixed by default because their total mole fractions at a particular phase is equal to 1. Okay, so if you specify the mole fractions of dry air, so mole fractions of the water vapor present in that particular mixture is automatically fixed. You can define mass of the dry air and the water vapor present. So it basically leads to the mass fractions. If you define mass fractions of any one of the component, the other one will be fixed. Apart from temperature and pressure, you can specify the mole fractions of any one of the component, mass fractions of the any one of the component, or you can define the humidity ratio or relative humidity ratio. They are basically related on these properties. Okay. So either specify humidity, relative humidity apart from temperature and pressure. If you specify any one of these quantity, the state is fixed. Okay. So today we'll stop here and we'll discuss. We'll start our discussions from this point in the next class. So if you have any queries up to this point, you may ask me. No queries. Fine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.